Hello and welcome to the part 2 of those stylized trails. So in the previous part we actually been focusing on making this soft smoky trail texture in Substance, and in this part I actually want to focus on that kind of shapes. So very defined, very hard edge shape for the trails in Substance. Okay, so in the first part we're just gonna do a single one, as you can see here, and in the second one we're probably gonna explore double trails, something like this, and we're probably gonna add a bit more variation to it. I want to show you some tips and tricks as well, but that will be in the second part. So in the first part, let's focus on the single trail like this, and hopefully in the second part I'll be able to give you some tips and tricks how to create a bit more defined shapes with some variation as well. Okay, so let's jump into Substance now. Okay, I'm gonna start with Perlin noise. I'm gonna run it through blur, high quality grayscale, set the intensity to 1 and quality to 1 as well, as I just need a little blur on that texture. And I'm gonna run it through transformation, as I would like to stretch this across, so I'm gonna set the width to 200. And now I'm just gonna run it through the cross section. So I don't think cross-section is actually available in the older versions of Substance Designer. I think it's very useful for the trails and all those kind of shapes. You could probably achieve something similar with a warp node, but it would be very difficult in my opinion to get those shapes. So I hope you get access to the cross-section, as I really like this node for those kind of trails. So let's change it to line. Decrease the segment amount and line thickness maybe to something like 0.5. I'm gonna run it through Histogram Scan now, with a high contrast, so I could get something like this. I'm gonna copy and paste my Histogram Scan, and I'm gonna blend it with some sort of texture that actually I'm gonna subtract some of the parts on this line. Okay, so set your blend node to subtract and get the tile sampler node next. Okay, I'm gonna plug this into the mask input and change the pattern to disk. For the amount I'm just gonna go 8x8. And I'm trying to create like a pattern of circles that I actually want to subtract from this texture. Okay, so it needs to be fairly randomized, and then we'll be able to change the scale of it. So let's maybe create scale random 0.5, as I want them to be a little bit more directional. Position random to the maximum, maybe offset 0.5 as well. And now I can go here and just change the scale of it. And because of we plugged this histogram scan into the mask input, we can scroll down and we can find mask map threshold. So I'm just gonna max it to 1. As you can see, those circles actually only appear where our line is, so I'm gonna invert it and plug this into our blend node. As you can see, we're kind of getting those really nice cutout shapes from this line. So now if I want to increase it, maybe you see we're getting some really cool results. And we can decrease this one as well, so we're gonna cut into those shapes even more. So maybe let's try to aim for maybe something like this. And now we can go back to our cross section and change this slider, and we're gonna achieve a lot more different trail shapes. So I'm trying to find something that I think would be looking nice, so I'm just gonna scroll this until I'll see something interesting. Okay. I actually think this could work. And obviously if it doesn't, then I can always go back and tweak it until I'll be happy. But so far, let's just keep going. Okay, so I'm gonna blur it, and I'm gonna blend it with this hard edge texture, because I just want this to serve as a glow. So I'm gonna set it to add, and as you can see, we're kind of getting this nice glow around it. But before we do that, I want to run this through blur as well. So I want to soften the edges just a little bit, something like this maybe. And for the blur, I'm actually going to increase the intensity, as I want glow to go a little bit further. And we can add another blur to blur the whole thing, but again, just very small amount, like 0.5. Okay, so now what we could do, we could get rid of some of the shapes from this, especially in the middle. So let's get blend node, Perlin noise next, and let's run Perlin noise through the histogram scan. And obviously I'm gonna reduce the scale of the Perlin noise to maybe something like this, plug this in, and set the blend node to subtract. And obviously we don't want to do that, so I'm just gonna play with the opacity, as I want to just get rid of some of the shapes. As you can see, I think our histogram is needs to be a bit more soft, so I'm just gonna decrease the contrast a bit more and increase the opacity on the blend. So we could get something like this maybe. I think we lost a lot more blur from it, so we're gonna introduce blur in a second, but we probably want to run this through transformation and stretch it to 200 and plug it back in. So those gray values will be stretched, as I believe it's gonna give us better results later on in the engine. Okay, so we have this. Now let's run this through a histogram scan and see if there's anything that we could use. So if you would like to get even more kind of cutout shapes from this, you could do basically this through histogram scan. As you can see, we're kind of getting even more erosion here. Let's see if it's actually tiling now. So I'm just gonna offset it here, and as you can see, it actually doesn't tile anymore. So you probably have to blur it next. And let's try histogram scan now. And I guess this could work, but we're losing a lot more cool shapes that I would like to. So let's keep our histogram scan maybe to the side, or maybe let's get rid of it, but feel free to use it, but then you'll end up with a non-tiling texture. And I think even this one is non-tiling, but let's give it a go. Yeah, we get this, line here, but again, we could just get rid of it by warping this a little bit, maybe with the blur as well. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do next. Okay, so let's put warp in here, Perlin noise next, small value, and obviously decrease the scale on the Perlin noise to maybe something like this. Okay, I'm gonna run it through transform because I want to see the tiling issue that we are having, and I'm just gonna blur this. Okay, so we got like a line here, but I don't think that would be an issue. Okay, the next thing would be to actually test it and see if that actually works. Okay, so what I would like to do, I want to run it through transform, rotate it 90 degrees, get the trapezoid transform grayscale, which is this, scale it at the top, and set the tiling to none, and then rotate it back as a trail. And now what we could do, we could introduce the gradient map and actually add some colors to it. And next I'm just gonna add some glow to it as well, and I want to go for actually like an orangey or yellowish and glow. Okay, so as you can see, it doesn't look that interesting. So ideally, we want to set the trapezoid bottom stretch to maybe -1. Okay, and now if we go to this transform or even this transform and change the offset, you can see how it could animate in the engine. Okay, so obviously that's not how you'll be exporting this texture, because what you probably need to export is that one, because that one's stylable, and then you modify the settings in the engine, actually something to mimic the trapezoid and a transform as well. Okay, but yeah, basically we've got this kind of trail, and I think it works. So now let's maybe go back to the cross section and let's try to look for some different shape. Like, I think this one is really crazy and cool looking, but obviously on the trapezoid now we've got -1 is, I think it's too much, so maybe -0.5. Let's try to offset it now. Okay, so I think personally that looks really cool. Okay, so this is the single trail. In the next part, what I'm actually gonna do, I'm gonna use exactly this part, but I'm gonna turn it into double trail, and we're probably gonna erode the middle part of it as well. Okay, there'll be a couple tricks, but you know, let's just move this here and continue in the next part for the double trail. All right, see you in the next one.